Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Megan, and I'm the witch here around the cauldron. And today's video is one that I didn't really plan on making. I planned on making something kind of like this, but not this particular one. So we're gonna do a little get ready with me, and I'm gonna do my makeup and drink my coffee while I talk to you about why it's important to stay informed about what's going on in your part of the world and why you should care about other people. So I'm really bad at doing these get ready with me things. I always end up like focusing on what I'm doing to my face instead of talking. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so this video will most likely get political, so I'm not sorry. And I'm not sure how much editing I'm gonna do for this video either, because while also being a mom and an employee or freelancer, I'm also a college student, so I have class in like 2 hours since like the time that I'm recording this video, so we'll see what happens. So just to say right off the bat, yes, this is most likely going to be a video talking about politics. No, I don't care. If you don't like it, this is my channel and I'm gonna talk about the things that are important to me. So if you don't like it, then feel free to stop watching, hit the thumbs down button, or unsubscribe. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. I'm also not really gonna talk about what I'm using on my face because that's not really the point here. But if for some reason someone is interested, I will try to remember to put everything in the description. Yeah, so I watched a video this morning by someone who I'm a new subscriber to their channel. I came across them like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it is that Divination Witch, I think is the name of her channel. And the video's title says, "I'm a woke witch. Deal with it," I think is what it is. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. The word woke has been used as like a derogatory term. It's been used as an insult when it just means that, usually in my experience, it just means that the person who is quote unquote woke understands that the typical white man narrative is not always true. So we think of, or I think of woke in terms of gender, woke in terms of sexuality, and in terms of race and religion. Like acknowledging that there are people in the world who exist that are different from me, and that's okay. There are people in the world who don't ascribe, they don't fit into the binary of what has been the traditional version of the world. You have different genders, and people are arguing that gender is biological and there are only two sexes biologically, which by the way is not correct, not accurate. We have people are arguing about philosophical answers, philosophical questions that aren't going to have a solid answer, and then making policies and decisions based on those particular people's answers to these philosophical questions, such as, when does life begin? Anyway, I watched her video, and you should watch it too. Ugh. Because she talks about her experience being a quote-unquote woke witch and the comments that she's gotten, and somebody has called her a coward and used woke as an insult toward her. And I feel that. Like, I get it. But it got me thinking about why it's so important for people to stay informed about what's happening in their country and in the political landscape of where they live. So it should come as no surprise that I am not a supporter of the current United States president, Donald Trump. I wasn't a supporter of him last time. I'm not a supporter of him this time. And this has nothing to do with party lines. I want to make that very clear. There are good and bad aspects on both sides of the party lines in the United States, usually. And my dislike for the current president has more to do with the fact of what he's doing and what he's allowing to happen. I haven't even got my makeup out yet. So, side note, as I dump everything out, I don't usually do my makeup. I needed something to do with my hands while I sat here and talked to all of you, because otherwise I don't know how this video would go. That's empty. I recently blocked my dad on Facebook. Yes, I still have Facebook because that is how I communicate with a lot of people in my family who don't live near me, because I live on one side of the country and everybody else lives everywhere else. And the reason for this is because before Trump won the election, I was having discussions with my dad about my fears with Project 2025 and what could potentially happen if Trump was elected and Project 2025 started to unfold. And in these conversations, I expressed concern with most of Project 2025, actually, and just Trump's behavior in general and how he treats other people, especially people that he doesn't like. I expressed concerns about a national abortion ban, because usually this comes with no exceptions, 0 exceptions. And as someone who is going into the healthcare field as a nurse, like, that's dangerous to have 0 exceptions for an abortion. And in the country, we're already seeing the repercussions of that. We're already seeing the damage that is being done because of abortion bans. There are women who are bleeding in parking lots because they're having a miscarriage, and the doctors don't perform an abortion because an abortion is a medical procedure. They don't perform an abortion because they're afraid that they're going to lose their license, get fined, go to jail. They're scared. What even am I doing? And in case you didn't know, the word abortion has become a really big buzzword with a negative connotation, but abortion doesn't just mean the elective procedure of terminating a pregnancy. In hospital records and medical records and in coding, the last time I checked, I used to do this for work, the phrase used for a miscarriage is a spontaneous abortion. So abortion itself is not just one thing. But besides the point, having a national abortion ban with no exceptions means that people who have been harmed and have gotten pregnant because of that harm would be forced to carry a child that is the product of rape, or the product of incest, or the product of coercion. And that doesn't seem very good for the health of that person, right? I am a female. I have a child. I have a child who is a female. Just speaking from my perspective and my own body, I had my tubes tied a couple years ago. I only have one child. Pregnancy was fine for me when I was pregnant. It was the aftermath that was horrible. I've spoken about it on the channel before. I had really bad postpartum depression, for anybody who doesn't know, and there were many times when my child was young, was an infant, where I considered suicide. I am better now, but that is my reasoning behind having my tubes tied and not wanting any more children. And I made sure that this was going to be the case, because where did my beauty blender go? I am losing my things. Literally, it disappeared. Oh well. Anyway, I made sure that I can't have any more kids. I had my tubes tied, but I also had something called an endometrial ablation. Basically, what this means is that when they went in to do my tubal ligation, they also went in with a laser and cauterized the inside of my uterus. And basically, it's just scar tissue now. I no longer have a menstrual cycle, and my uterus is no longer hospitable for babies. However, that doesn't mean that my tubal ligation can't fail. And if my tubal ligation fails and I get an ectopic pregnancy, for example, which, by the way, if left untreated via abortion is a death sentence, or via surgery is a death sentence, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to die? Are they going to be able to perform the necessary medical procedures to make sure that I don't die, so that my current child doesn't lose her mother because of an unsavable egg that implanted incorrectly? And I think I'm going off track here. The point I guess that I was trying to make is that I had to put a pause on speaking about this with my dad, because I expressed my concerns to him about the abortion ban, about disbanding the Department of Education. I'm a college student who is currently going to school on Pell Grants. The Department of Education also affects my child's education. Anyway, all of this was happening before the inauguration, before Trump took office. Now, with everything that's happening currently in the political landscape, I was trying to talk to him and say, look, this is what's happening. These are the things that I was scared of. You told me that everything is going to be fine, and I need you to understand that I'm scared, not just for myself, but for everyone else that is currently being affected by everything that is happening in the government. I understand that I have privilege because I am a white woman, and I am definitely speaking from a place of privilege. I haven't really spoken about politics on this channel before. A lot of my political stuff happens offline, which is absolutely where it should happen. Calling representatives and emailing people that you need to talk to and staying informed. But I just want to recognize that I'm speaking from a place of privilege here. So I'm only going to talk about the things that I know how they work because of how they affect me. Two things have happened recently in the government that affect religion. And since I am a witch and a polytheist or pagan, I feel like it's important to talk about those and to stay informed. And I'm still losing my things. I can't see. Okay, whatever. I guess I'm going to have to use my fingers for my primer. So Staying informed is critical. Oh, I got lotion on my face. Oops. Staying informed is critical, even if you are on the other side. And I say that very loosely because there shouldn't be sides when you talk about caring for other people and how things are going to affect other people and making decisions that will affect other people. The first thing is that Donald Trump, I lost my nose ring. I'm really bad at this. Donald Trump directed his attorney general, I think. I don't remember her full name. Bondi, Bondi. Directed his attorney general to put together a task force meant to fight against anti-Christian violence and discrimination in the government. Anti-Christian violence and discrimination. Now, I have nothing against people of other religions. Let me make that very clear. But I also want to make it very clear that there is no anti-Christian violence or discrimination happening in the federal government. This task force was literally put together so that Donald Trump and his administration could more easily target transgender people. And I am connecting this dot or these dots because of the verbiage in his executive order or press release or whatever, creating this task force. It discusses how people in the federal government should not be subjected to things that go against their religion. So people in the federal government, federal employees and elected officials, should not have to recognize that transgender people exist. They should not have to create laws to protect transgender people. They should not have to allow transgender people to change the sex on their government documents, their driver's licenses and passports and all of that stuff. And he used that as a basis to ban all of those things, specifically relating to transgender people and gender. The other thing that happened, what the heck is that? The other thing that happened is Donald Trump created a White House faith office. I forget exactly what it's called, but he created this, and it is being directed by 2 or 3 people of faith in the federal government. These people aren't federal employees. They are like pastors. At least one of them is a pastor. But he put this office together for the purpose of bringing religious values and God back into the country. I don't have the executive order pulled up in front of me. I literally record on my phone, which is where I look at all of this information. But this office in the executive order explains that Donald Trump thinks God needs to be brought back into the federal government and into the government in general, that people need to bring God back into their lives, that it's going to focus on education around family values and marriage and a bunch of other stuff. I'll leave links to all of these executive orders in the description. If I edit this at all, I'll try to put verbiage up on the screen about it. But my problem, first of all, my problem with this is that you're not supposed to bring religion into the government. There's literally supposed to be a separation of church and state to make sure that one religion is not held above another, because we have multiple religions here in the country. So that's my first problem with this. My second problem is that the verbiage in the executive order is so vague, even in the first one where he creates this task force. It is so vague. It doesn't define Christian violence and it doesn't define anti-Christian violence and anti-Christian discrimination. It doesn't define it. So it leaves the door open for whatever politicians and faith leaders want to interpret that as. So if it's not defined, in theory, a religious leader in a town or state can go to the government and complain that the local Wicca coven is performing full moon rituals at a park that they have a permit for, that they have gotten the reservation, that they have paid for the time to reserve that space. They can go complain about that, and if that government interprets that as discrimination against the Christian group or the other religious leader who has a problem with it, they can stop covens from going out into public and performing their rituals in parks and in nature and places that everybody should have access to. And I can foresee this being done under the guise of other people shouldn't be subjected to non-Christian methods of worship. That's how I see that going. And it's pretty hypocritical, but there's nothing logical about anything that is happening in the government right now. And it reminds me, honestly, about when I was living in California. I don't remember when Prop 8, I think it was Prop 8, same-sex marriage, was on the ballot in California. I believe I was still in high school. So this has been a while. The city that I lived in, actually, after same-sex marriage was legalized in California, the city that I lived in stopped handing out marriage certificates to everyone because that particular office didn't agree with same-sex marriage. So they refused to hand out marriage certificates because they were going to have to hand out marriage certificates to same-sex couples. And I can absolutely see that happening again. I can absolutely see government employees now putting their beliefs onto the actions of other people. And I don't know how that will affect witches and how that will affect those of us who aren't Christian, those of us who are in some group that the president doesn't like and that conservatives don't like. But it's kind of scary. Actually, it's not kind of scary. It's really scary because we're supposed to have separation of powers in this country. We are supposed to have 3 branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Is this what I want? No, I'll want that in a minute though. And those three powers in the government are supposed to act as forms of checks and balances against each other to make sure that one branch of the government doesn't have more power than they should. To make sure that, basically, to make sure that we don't end up a dictatorship, and that it is supposed to preserve the concept of democracy. That is actively being challenged with what's happening right now. Actively being challenged with all of these executive orders, and the fact that the Vice President of the United States just posted on Twitter, X, whatever it is, that if if somebody tried to tell a general how to do his job, it wouldn't be allowed. Something else, and then basically insinuated that the judicial branch of the government, the Supreme Court, is not allowed to tell the executive branch what they can and can't do. But that is the entire purpose of the judicial branch of the government. The legislative branch of the government, so Congress and the House of Representatives, they make the laws. The legislative branch interprets the laws. The judicial branch interprets the laws, and the executive branch enforces the laws. There are checks and balances in place for a reason. And right now, that is all being eroded in front of us. I can understand the desire to audit the government, because I don't agree with a lot of what the government spends money on. However, what's happening right now is not the legal way to go about doing it. And there are so many programs and so much money that has been stopped without context that is going to affect millions of people, not just in our country, not just in the United States, but around the world. That's not what I want. I want this, and this, and this. So, I don't know. I really felt like I had more to say. And part of me is just afraid of talking in circles, because I tend to do that, especially when it's something that either irritates me or scares me or I'm really passionate about. But there is a reason that I think you, as witches, not you, but like as witches, we are already on the fringes of society and the material world. And that's not to say that, like, oh, we're special because we're outsiders. No, that is literally to say that we are not a popular demographic. We are not a common demographic. Even though in our online spaces it might seem like there's a lot of us, that just makes it seem like there's more of us than there actually is. And there are people who will persecute other people for not having the same religious faith. There are people who will be angry that you practice witchcraft or that you are a pagan. And on the other side of that, we as witches work with unseen energies in the world, right? We are already on the fringes and on the outside of the natural world. And again, that's not to say, oh, we're special because, you know, we have 1 foot in this world and 1 foot out of it. No, that is to say that we can see we can see. There are things that are happening that are going to affect people literally all over the world. And being on the fringes of society, we are part of the group that will, we will face backlash and consequences. And I think it's really terrible that there are witches in the world who are okay with the persecution and discrimination of other people based on random things that don't really matter to everybody else. Like, I guess that's what it boils down to for me, is people exist. All kinds of people exist around the world. If what someone is doing doesn't harm other people, then why does it matter? Why does it matter? And the first thought that comes to my head is that people will argue, like, well, abortion harms other people. But does it? Because there's no correct scientific answer for when life begins, there's no way of determining if that harms a person, so to say, a living being. Because from a scientific perspective, at least from my current understanding, we determine life based on the ability to function like on your own, right? And that's not to say without assistive devices, people with disabilities and people who take medication. No, that's not what I mean. I mean the ability to have your heart beat, to make decisions, to have brain function, and to get nutrients, right? Like, you need to be able to eat, you need to be able to live on your own, as in survive. You need to, there needs to be some sort of brain function. Because even in the scientific community, even in the medical field, you can determine someone dead if they have no brain activity. That is brain death. They cannot function without the life support of the machines that are doing all of their bodily functions for them, right? Bacteria, considered living cells because they can do all of those things. They might not have brain activity. They don't have a brain. But when it comes to the way they function, they don't require feeding off of an outside source, right? Viruses, not alive, because they require a host to replicate and continue. A fetus, for example, up until a certain developmental stage, requires the uterus to give it nutrients and blood and for protection, all of that stuff. A 9-week-old fetus cannot survive outside of a uterus. Where was I originally going with this? Harming other people. Anyway, that's a philosophical debate for abortion. My point is, for this video, that you should care about others, and that it shouldn't matter of someone's religion or someone's race or ethnicity or gender or sexuality or what have you. It shouldn't matter to you because it doesn't hurt you. It literally doesn't hurt you. It might make you uncomfortable to think that someone's gender is different than the way you believe gender works, but it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't affect you. And it's not a problem to use a name that someone prefers. Cis people do it all the time. You get married, you change your name, you have a new name, right? You have a friend who has this name, but they prefer to go by another name, but it's fine because it's a nickname. We should just care about other people, because who are we as a society and as a community if we don't care about other people? If we don't support people and advocate for the rights of people to live in a way that makes them happy, as long as it's not as long as it's not endangering other people. Someone choosing to live their truth and dress and behave in a way that goes against the societal expectations of their gender has no effect on me. I don't care. They are free to live their lives in the way that makes them happy. They want to use a certain name? Cool, I will call them by whatever name they want. I don't care. Their happiness is just as important as my happiness is. Their mental health is just as important as mine is. So, yeah. I'm just rambling at this point because it blows my mind that there are people that exist in this world who care so much about what other people do when it doesn't affect them, who care so much about controlling other people and making other people fit their narrative. But why? The world is so complex and people are so complicated and complex that it's impossible for everyone to agree on what the world should look like. Like, yes, we should not have murderers and people that are causing harm to other people. That I can agree with. But to sit here and say that someone else's gender identity or religion or sexual orientation does harm to me is asinine. This lighting does not do my makeup any favors. I promise it matches in person. I promise it does. Yeah. I didn't really have a point to this video other than to get on here and use my platform to ramble and tell people that yes, you should care about others, and yes, you should pay attention to what's happening in the government, because whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, it will somehow come back to affect you or people that you know and people that you care about. And as witches, I don't think that you can be anti-woke, because we literally fall into the demographic of people who are anti-woke. Like, we just do. So, yeah. I have another video that I have planned where I'm going to talk about different things that you can do as a witch to support yourself and your community through all of the political chaos that's happening right now from a magical perspective. But the magical perspective is not the only thing that needs to happen. So while I will use the video, my next video, to discuss magical things that you can do for political activism or to protect your mental health during all of this, please know that political witchcraft without political action is pointless. You have to do something to physically help. Casting a spell and then not following that up with action just lets the energy that you have put out into the universe know that you're not willing to do the work for it yourself. So call your representatives, protest if you can, talk to your friends and family about why this is important to you and how it affects you. But don't just do nothing. And I'm going to leave it at that. So if you stuck around, thank you. If you didn't, well, you won't see this anyway. On a lighter note, I want to show you my cup because my child went shopping with her friend and saw this and thought of me, and she bought it for me. And it makes me happy, and I have been using it every morning since she bought it for me. And I wanted to end this video on a happy note and to tell you to just stay informed and do something. And I'll talk to you next time.